Jaya Row, one of the foremost speakers, or perhaps the foremost speaker on Vedanta, and she makes the Bhagavad Gita sound even more beautiful than it is, if possible. And she makes it really relatable to our lives, especially now when we're all in the midst of perhaps the greatest crisis we've seen in our generation. Jayaji, welcome. And I will, of course, ask you right away about what are the lessons from the Gita for coping with this pandemic? What can India tell the world at this time?
Thank you. Yes, one of the most important things is that the world is a mix of pairs of opposites. There will always be opposites like profit and loss, health and ill health, joy, sorrow, birth, death, etc. The world is constantly changing, and this change is unpredictable, as we've seen it with the
Yeah.
COVID thing. In December 2019, none of us would have imagined that the world would be where it is.
Right.
Now, given this, it is unintelligent for the human being to expect a set pattern, which I think we were. That we were safely ensconced in a particular mental setup that we had decided for ourselves. And we thought that this would go on quite naturally. And suddenly the carpet was pulled from under our feet, and we were not prepared. So, one of the first things that Vedanta or the Bhagavad Gita teaches us is to understand the nature of the world, be prepared for change, be prepared for things to turn upside down as they have, and build a base, a foundation within ourselves that can weather the storm. Like in the ocean,
Yeah.
there is a tiny raft, there is a launch, and there is that mighty ocean liner. But all of them are resting on the surface of the ocean.
Right.
In the ocean, there is a lighthouse, the humble lighthouse, which is unaffected by the waves and the storms because its foundation rests on the ocean bed. And that is what the Gita talks about.
Right.
And it's possible for us to get there.
Right. Ma'am, you've talked about building one's immunity, and you talk about the four levels. You talk about Bahubal, Manobal, Buddhibal, and Atmabal, the body, the mind, the intellect, and the spirit. So, how does one get to that ultimate spirit, ultimate level of, achieving spirituality, expanding one's mind?
Yes. Um, See, most of us, we are a generation of body worshippers. It's all
Right.
about the body. How do I look? What am
Yeah.
I eating? What am I wearing? Things like that. Now, with that, you become most susceptible to the vagaries of the world. So, when you move up to, say, the emotional, like a young mother who earlier, before her child is born, is very concerned about her hair, her nails, and this, that, and the other. When the child is born, the emotional pleasure of being a mother is so great that she's indifferent to physical variations. So, this is what we talk about, elevation to higher levels of joy, fulfillment, in such a way that the physical no longer affects us. Then from the emotional, you move one step further to the intellectual, where you see, for instance, a young graduate from an Indian university who wants to go to a premium university in the United States. He wants admission there. So his attention gets focused on intellectual, like maybe he wants to go and do a PhD there or an MBA at Harvard Business School. So what happens? He stops hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
He gives up physical joys, emotional joys, because he is so centered in the intellectual ideal goal of getting admission, and that is more fulfilling.
Mm.
And then you take that mighty leap into the realm of the spirit, where you start asking questions, like in Plato's metaphor. Plato talks about a generation of people living in a dark, dingy cave. And all of them thought that that was what the whole universe was.
Right.
Until a young man gets up and says, there's got to be something beyond this cave, and ventures out. So that is the spiritual, where the thought comes to us that there's got to be something beyond my little cocooned world. And that's where the mind expands and you reach out to realms unknown. And that, they say, is the ultimate human fulfillment.
How does one get there? How does one process that entire journey? Does right? Does one read? Does one follow a guru? Does one do self study? What are the various ways?
I think the main thing is it begins with ourselves.
Right,
We need to have that questioning mind,
right,
uh, the understanding, what they call as mumukshatva, means desire for liberation. The understanding that my life is not really the ideal life.
right,
Yes, I have pleasures, I have wealth, I have everything else, but there is something lacking. And so there is that urge to venture out into the unknown. And that is what makes for a human being.
right.
No other creature can do that except
Yeah,
the human being.
that,
So all of us have it, but many of us don't act on it, don't promote it, don't let it grow. But those who allow it to grow find the returns are tremendous.
Jayji,
sometimes.
what are you,
Sorry.
sorry. Jayji, what are you saying and what I have read about what you have been saying? Do you find an ideal human being of your dream anywhere, what you teach and what you tell us? Have you come across an ideal human being who possesses all these qualities which you are describing?
Uh, See, it's difficult to assess other people.
Right,
And in today's world of media and the exposure that media gives, like a media person told me many years ago, about 30 years ago, he told me, "You're not newsworthy." And I agreed with him. I said, "Yes, I'm not newsworthy because to become newsworthy, you have to do certain things which I don't want to do, you know." But that apart,
You can't be newsworthy because you are talking about Gita, which was written, I don't know how many centuries ago,
I know.
which is still valid, but newspaper don't understand that.
Yes. No, coming back to the perfect individual, like it is said in English, you need to be a Milton to understand a Milton. So even if a perfect person were in our midst, it would be difficult for us to find him or her. And even if we do, it is difficult to convince others that here is a perfect person. But yes, with the study of Vedanta and the Bhagavad Gita, we have a very clear picture of what perfection is. And we can strive towards that perfection. I don't know any living person whom I could confidently say has reached the state of perfection. But in the past, yes, definitely. There was a Sri Ramakrishna, the guru of Swami Vivekananda, who was an enlightened person. There was a Ramana Maharshi. There was a Swami Ramatirtha, who I believe were all enlightened souls. And I find deep inspiration and motivation from their lives and their teachings.
They were ideal because they are not connected with either politics or industry.
No, even if you go back in life, in history, there were this concept of Raja Rishis.
right.
They were Rajas, administrators, they were very much in the daily routine of life, but they were enlightened people. So you can be and that is the most heartening part of Vedanta, that you can be bang in the middle of the world, in the middle of your involvement with the world, and yet be a perfect individual within.
Does one need to does the suffering, pain, does that lead you to this point? Can that be one of the motivators to seeking a higher spirit, a higher cause? Does it always come from pain, or can it come through joy as well?
No, it doesn't always come from pain. The best way to get it is through just inner reflection and thinking, which, for instance, Buddha had.
Right,
He didn't have to go through any pain himself. but he had it in him. And in fact, his father tried his very best to keep all
Yeah,
signs of pain away from him,
exactly.
but he couldn't.
You're right.
And so, even without experiencing personal pain, he had that tremendous motivation and drive within him. But yes, what you're saying is true in modern times, particularly. The majority of people turn towards spirituality when they have undergone some tragedy or some bereavement or some loss in life.
Right. You also
Jay,
met a, sorry.
sorry, Jay, do you think this COVID-19 what happened to the world, it will take people back to some kind of spiritualism, like yogas, everybody confined to home? So you'll go back to what you thought was outdated, modern, and not required for modern day life. Now people have realized that nature is the best healer.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. In many ways, I feel it is a temporary hiatus, and when things get back to normal, they will probably resume their earlier life with a bang, with more enthusiasm. But yes, there are people who have who have used this opportunity to do the things that they never found time for and which they wanted to do. So, for instance, there are many people from business and industry who have now turned towards something like this. And that is heartening.
Hmm.
Does it mean that it means Vedanta or Gita or whatever we call it doesn't have a everlasting or long-lasting utility for a person who's materialistic by nature?
No, not true. Um, Vedanta has a long lasting effect on everybody, even materialistic people, to the extent they are receptive and to the extent they use it. But most people, I find, not most, many people, I find are just waiting for things to get back to normal. They are not using this as an opportunity to look within and grow inward, but some are.
We talked briefly about perfection and then we skipped that point. May I ask what makes for that perfection? What are the qualities one needs to have apart from, say, inner reflection?
As I said, the main quality we need to have is that desire for liberation,
Right.
which takes us through the path, the spiritual path, which consists of, it's mainly threefold. One, at action level, working with the attitude of giving rather than taking in any field of activity,
Hmm.
including business. Second, to remove hatred from our hearts,
Hmm.
this repulsion, competition, viewing people as opponents rather than partners,
Right.
uh, removing negative emotions from our hearts. And the third is constant reflection on the difference between what is permanent and impermanent.
Right.
So when you do these three, then you develop a certain maturity of mind, you develop a steadiness of mind, which then is applied to meditation, and that removes the last traces of imperfection in you, and you move to the state of perfection.
While being perfectly within, your life, your domestic life, your professional life.
Absolutely. You don't need to change anything about you or around you. You only need to change your attitude and the way you look at things.
Right.
Yeah, you're going back to Gita, which you have been giving lectures about Gita and not in various management institutes or industrial corporate houses. What kind of shlokas or chapters you normally refer to when you're talking to managers and everybody else to follow in life to be a successful human being or a manager or an industrialist? Because from
Um,
1 to chapter 18, you have got almost 700 shlokas there, and how
yes.
you pick up which one to. From one is something where you feel that I must give up everything. You start like giving up everything, and ultimately you become a mokshi. You want to moksha, go to moksha, 18th chapter.
No, in fact, we do not talk about giving up anything.
That's the
We
first
talk
chapter. It begins like that.
we talk about renunciation. Renunciation is not giving up things that we value. It is giving up that which comes in the way of our enjoying life. Like, we give examples like renunciation is like removing the wrapper and eating the chocolate. It is acting and giving up the obstacles that come in the way of action, which is obsession with action and anxiety for the fruit of action, which is rampant in sport. Like a batsman plays brilliantly till he hits 90. And at 90, his mind his concentration slips. He thinks of the past, how many times he has come up to 90 and not hit the 100.
Right.
His mind goes to the future. Will I get the century? Won't I get the century? So he's not concentrating on the present. He gets out to a simple ball and he doesn't achieve his goal. So renunciation is giving up the anxiety for the 100 and the obsession with the 100.
No, I'm asking you a question. How do you tell the managing gurus
Yes.
people that how to use the Gita as a guiding kind of a book or principle? They read anything about written by Harvard and whatnot. What about written in Gita? How it is relevant for running a successful entrepreneur?
Chapter 3, which deals with Karma Yoga,
Yes.
the most important aspect which management executive or a corporate executive can easily apply in his life to achieve success. In fact, verse 30 of chapter 3 gives the prescription for perfect action. And that one verse, if people apply in their lives, there will be a significant difference in their productivity.
What is that? What is that, Jayaji?
Just a minute, Kaveri, let me finish this particular part because I'm very interested because she has said something about it. You have said somewhere Bhagavad Gita empowers you to have fulfilling relationships without allowing conflicts and strife to come in the way. That is what you interpreted Gita as. But when you go to competition, there is only conflicts and strifes. How you maintain the relationships there, whether it's in the family, whether it's conflict. But this interpretation of Gita somehow looks at variances what is happening actually in the world.
In relationships, what comes in the way is our expectations, and then we make demands on the people that we are interacting with. And when these expectations and demands are not met with, we get bitter, frustrated, and there is a resulting conflict. So what we say is the Gita talks of attachment. This is attachment. Attachment is love plus selfishness, which leads to all of this. So what we say is you don't have to give up a relationship. Continue the love. Just drop the selfishness. Drop the expectations, drop the demands. Then your love will become unconditional. And then you will have seamless relationships with people. So what we do is, in fact, our expectations are so high that they can never be met with by people. And
There is a
therefore,
conflict. Even in Gita, there is a conflict. What Arjuna wants to say, in particular, first 5-6 chapters, and after that, when Krishna starts speaking after the 3rd chapter, so there is a conflict. Who is right more when Arjuna is raising a lot of questions there?
no, the conflict that is portrayed in the backdrop of the Gita has a significance. The positive and negative forces, it is an external depiction of what is happening inside us. So within us, we have positive tendencies which are represented by the Pandavas, they are fewer in number, and the negative tendencies which are larger in number, represented by the Kauravas. So if our positive tendencies surrender to the higher, represented by Krishna, then you win the battle over your own negativities and you emerge a victorious person in the world. That is the meaning behind the battle of the Mahabharata.
Jayaji, you mentioned the verse 30 of chapter 3, which
Yes.
is the prescription for action. Could you tell us what it is and could you explain it to us?
Yes. See, the underlying theme of Karma Yoga is to identify a field of your talent, your passion, your most powerful desire. So that is called Swadharma. One person is born to be a musician, another person is born to be a tennis player, so on and so forth. So we need to identify the field of our talent and invest energies in it. And in that field, fix a higher goal. Don't make mere profit the motive. Go beyond profit, then profit comes to you. Like Dr. Viktor Frankl said, prosperity is the unintended side effect of your dedication to a cause greater than yourself. And this is what the Gita speaks of. And then your intellect must direct all your activities towards that goal. Let's say cricket is the goal of a youngster. Then everything he does, the food he eats, what time he sleeps, what exercises he does, whether he goes to the gym or not, everything, all his activities are directed towards excellence in cricket. This is called consistency of purpose. Then the mind must surrender to it. The mind must love, you must love what you're doing. Like if one is a journalist, one should love journalism just as a field. So when you love it, then you generate energy within yourself. And the body must act dynamically. So what we recommend is at least half an hour of physical exercise for everyone, irrespective of one's age, because the body is a machine that is made for energy acting. And this energy that you generate is dissipated in the unproductive channels of worry over past, anxiety for future, and excitement in the present. So the intellect must direct the mind to the present action and not allow it to meander into unproductive channels of past and future. If you do this, then your action will be perfect and future success assured. So this includes, I'm just summarizing, C's, consistency of purpose, concentration, and cooperation. Team spirit.
Right, which we tend to ignore.
Yes.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was the distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is all around us. We've seen it particularly in the last 3 or 4 months. It's been exacerbated by COVID. How does one make sure the pain doesn't always lead to suffering?
Yeah. So what happens is that our minds are anxious. And so we suffer. First of all, pain is a given.
Yeah.
So the moment you are born, you are subject to pain. Every child is born crying, so it can't be a pleasant experience.
And also then it's slapped also on the back.
Yeah. And so pain is something that's part and parcel of life. But what we do unintelligently is we suffer in anticipation. Like nowadays, many people are saying, oh, what if I get COVID? What if I'm put on a ventilator? So the mental suffering has already started long before you get the COVID. And chances are you may not get it. But the suffering you've already gone through.
Right.
Then we suffer in the present. When bad things happen to us, we suffer.
Right.
And then we suffer in retrospect.
Yeah.
And nowadays, we not only think about it and relive a past experience, but we post it on Facebook and Twitter and this, that, and the other, and the suffering gets compounded.
Yeah.
So that becomes unbearable. So what Vedanta says is that at least stop the suffering in anticipation and stop the retrospective suffering. And in the present, accept that this is what it is, and I will do my best to overcome it and remain unaffected, and things will pass. Things have to pass.
Right. Which does not mean that one does not have regrets. It's just that one knows one's mistakes and one should not repeat them.
Yes.
What again is the difference?
See, what is important is that when you know that the likelihood of something happening, the important thing is to take proper precautions.
Right.
Like in this case, everywhere we read, all you have to do is wear a mask, keep social distancing, and take basic hygiene precautions, and you'll be okay. But there are people who throw caution to the winds. And then they get, like yesterday, I heard of somebody going to a hospital without a whole family going to a hospital without a mask. A family member died. They went to the crematorium without a mask. And the next thing you know, all of them have got COVID.
Yeah.
So this is irresponsible action, not only for yourself, but for society. You're
Right.
creating a problem for others.
Right.
So,
How does
Jayaji, these things,
sorry.
sorry, Jayaji, these things which are now being sold and hawked and propagated as modern techniques, like cleaning your hands, wearing a mask, keeping a social distancing, these have been part of Indian culture from the beginning, centuries ago. Because even the Jain monks and whatever you see, they have a mask on their face. And in Japan, I went 35 years ago, I saw people wearing masks at that point in time. Even the doctors which are operating in you for 25 years, they were wearing a mask. So this is mask and hand cleaning. For example, we keep our shoes outside the home. So this what is being sold as modern techniques has been part of the Indian culture or many other cultures all over the world. So why this hype in something which should come naturally? Because we have forgotten, our children have forgotten, our new generation has forgotten, and therefore the internet we are talking about Twitter, you are talking about Facebook. They don't teach about these things. They teach about many other things on various kind of dances, various kinds of food, various kinds of films. They don't teach about how to clean yourself and keep yourself healthier.
Yes, hopefully that will change now.
I wanted to sort of take off from what Mr. Chawla was saying. And it's very interesting. Even the new philosophies that you come across now, Jayaji, like mindfulness, heartfulness, they're all actually derived in some way or the other from the Gita, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you look around and you see, look at all these different kinds of philosophies, which are good, but the base of all these seems to be the Gita, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it is our misfortune that we are not looking back and taking the wealth of the Gita,
Yes.
and we are still looking westward and taking only the surface that has been extracted and promoted or marketed.
Right. So,
I'm saying something else. What Kaveri said, I'm just taking forward.
yeah,
She's also
sure.
making the same point. I'm saying there's some kind of a conflict between what Gita has told us and what the modern world is doing. Gita is still a permanent scripture which can be followed 50,000 years later also. For example, you are saying reduce your desires by improving quality of your desire and live a life to build merit and worth in life against management or asking for more. This is what the Gita says, that you control your desires. But what is happening in the modern world is that you are not able to control. You are expanding your desire. I want this, I want this, I want this. And because of that, you suffer also. So how you resolve between a permanent, everlasting, long-lasting message of Gita and what is the market mechanism of the world teaching to our young generation?
Yes, you've hit upon a very important aspect. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 3 especially, he uses 4 words to mean enemy. He's describing desire as enemy. And if you look at the modern world, they are promoting desire, they are nurturing desire, nourishing desire. And in fact, the entire financial system is based on desire. So when we talk of the Gita, it is like the people have to bring about a complete change in mindset. So what we say is, and this is what the Bhagavad Gita says, you can by all means have objects of desire, but never desire it. And when you take desire back to its origin and understand that desire comes only from ignorance, all you need is knowledge. Once you gain knowledge, the desire will automatically go. Then there are people who are, because truth has an impact.
So for
However,
example, COVID, for example, suppressed your many desires. You wanted to go abroad, you wanted to go on holiday, you wanted to go on cruise, you wanted to have the best food. This Gita, which was permanent lesson for all of us, when we are able to suppress your desire during those 120 days we have been under lockdown, What you are saying, it will come back with a bang. So what do we do to tell our young generation, okay, read Gita. Gita is not read by anybody. It is in
Yes.
Sanskrit, English is not, the Hindi is not there much of time. So what are you doing to propagate Gita through your social medium, through your lecture? So it becomes some kind of a household name all over the world. Or not all over the world, at least in India. It has no God, it has no religion.
Yes, we are trying our best. I have two, sometimes three sessions a day with different groups of people. We have webinars for the public from anywhere in the world. We have had four so far, and we are planning to have many more. So we are doing our best. It's up to the people to take it, and I'm sure they will. Quite a few people who otherwise would never have thought of it now are thinking of it. So we should look upon this COVID as nature's way of nudging us to course correct.
Mm.
And
And
if a few leaders of society do it, then the rest will follow. It's like veganism, you know, when they wanted to promote veganism, cut down meat eating, their goal was to get to the top 7% of the Americans. And they said, once they take to it, the whole world will follow.
right.
So it's like that. We are trying to get to the intellectuals, the thought leaders of society. Once they change, hopefully the rest of society will also change.
If Gita becomes the subject in Harvard only, then it will become a popular thing. All the kids who are going to Harvard and every places, I
Yeah.
think Oxford and Cambridge should make Gita as a compulsory reading. Then I think it will become a part of life.
It's already happening. Hollywood stars like Will Smith, Julia Roberts are declaring that they are studying the Bhagavad Gita.
Jayaji, you also talked about how human beings live basically just 3% of their potential, that there's so much untapped potential in them. So, of course, it brings us back to expanding our minds. But how does one go do this gradually as a daily practice? Could you give us some tips which we can sort of integrate in our daily life to at least enhancing this potential of living?
Yes, the first thing that the Bhagavad Gita speaks of is the importance of the intellect,
Right,
buddhi, the head.
right,
And once you start using the intellect, once the intellect starts guiding our life's activities, then you, whereas otherwise you tap into barely a small percentage of your personality, that goes shooting up to maybe 40 or 50%. And then when you fix a higher goal in life,
mm,
you become more creative, you
mm.
become more energetic. Like it is reported that Mahatma Gandhi, at even a ripe age of 70 plus, was used to walk very fast.
Yes,
And
you can see in all the old documentaries.
so, how
You know,
does,
Mr.
Yeah,
Gandhi used to follow that.
the first Mrs. Gandhi.
First Mrs. Gandhi.
so that makes you more energetic, it gets you more creative, so your mind expands, you tap into more of your potential. Then when you learn the art of right relationships with people, you manage to get people to join in your goal, your ideal, like that famous example of Shivaji and Tanaji.
Right,
Shivaji treated Tanaji as his brother,
right,
and that is what enabled Tanaji to regain that very important fort near Pune.
right,
He achieved the impossible.
right,
So, team spirit, this brotherhood and camaraderie is
right.
important. And when you become independent of the world,
Hmm.
uh, your focus is more on the permanent aspects of life, then you become a towering personality. And that's how you tap into your potential. You help others to tap into their potential also.
Right,
So I often tell people that yes, there are avatars, means there are people who are born at, who are enlightened at birth.
yeah,
Then there were great people like Buddha who reached the state of enlightenment during their lifetime. But we should never lose hope, because to cross a river, you don't necessarily need an expensive powered yacht. You
yeah,
can put together a few pieces of wood and that becomes a raft that carries you across. So
hmm.
every one of us has this choice to
Mm.
choose the higher over the lower
Mm.
every moment of our lives. And
Right.
if we do that, we also become role models in our own way, in our own sphere of influence. And we must accept that responsibility and accept accountability for it and go ahead and do it.
Jaji, how would you describe India as a society currently? Do you see it as a society which is increasingly comfortable with itself? Is it in chaos? Is it aspirational? Is it looking for inspiration? How would you describe it?
It is aspirational for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, it is also chaotic.
Hmm.
India is like Bhelpuri, it's a mix of opposites.
Hmm.
And it depends on your vision, your attitude, which part of India are you looking at.
Hmm.
And if you ask me, I am very optimistic about India because of the aspirations of the people.
Hmm.
Irrespective of what political party is in power or what happens in Delhi, there are people in small towns
Hmm.
more than in big cities
Hmm.
who have aspirations and they will work to realize their
Hmm.
aspirations.
Hmm.
And this is what is really keeping India going. And what is heartening is a statement made, I think, quite a few years by an RBI governor that it is the invisibles that bolster the rupee, the foreign
Right.
exchange value. So it is the invisibles and also the spiritual aspirations of people, because at the end of the day, India is still a spiritual country.
Hmm. Hmm.
Talk to people about spirituality and you touch a chord that is not possible anywhere else in the world. And I have hope that it is possible to do it.
Yet there is so much hatred. When you speak of the power of love, which the Gita also speaks of, yet you see so much hatred and divisiveness around us. Does that not worry you?
You know, yes, there is a section of society
Yeah,
which is full of hatred, but I think there is too much focus on that.
right,
The media is focused only on the aberrations of society.
right,
There are lots of people who are good people. There are lots of people who are divine people. And it is these unknown heroes that are keeping society going.
right,
These people, media is not interested in
right,
and will never report it.
yeah.
Like, I'll give you a simple example. Once in my home, we had some carpentry work done. And when the carpenter had finished his work, I was paying him. And he kept telling me there is some mistake.
Huh.
And I got impatient with him. I said, no, I've calculated everything and it's correct. He said, Madam, आपने मुझे advance दिया था.
Oh,
you know and it touched me so deeply, because he could have kept quiet and taken that
right.
money. I would never have known.
Hmm.
So because he pointed it out, I said it was meant to be yours,
Hmm.
so take it. These are the people,
Hmm.
honest to goodness, God fearing, good people.
Yeah, the problem is that media is being blamed for everything
No, I'm not
bad in the.
I'm
No,
not
no,
blaming
no,
India.
you are right. I'm not blaming you at all. That we are blaming for what, because this is what people want to read. What is the negativity about all things? Positivity is never read. There are very few people like you who are doing some positive work. But the question lies here, if you go by the Gita itself, sometimes you find contradiction there itself. And at the one time you're talking about, okay, you have to give up everything, and at the end of it, you are telling him to kill your own people, karm karo apna. It is very difficult to understand. Society is also like that. There are people who are doing their karma, but there are people who are doing karmas to take revenge from somebody else, to regain what they've lost. So it is part of the Gita itself. So where do you balance the society? COVID, for example, I thought first time in my lifetime I've seen something which has almost equalized everybody, rich and poor, together. So this should have been a lesson for everybody to rethink how they are recovered. Now they're still interested in selling various varieties of masks, various varieties of ventilators, various varieties of sanitizers, everything you get advertising. My sanitizer is better than yours, how it is designed. So every opportunity of sadness or depression or disease is being converted into an opportunity of making money. This is not what the Gita says.
Yes, but see, this is true in any society, that the really good people are smaller in number, but they are more powerful. So, as long as you have that critical mass of leaders who are thinkers, who are visionaries, you're safe. Then at least there is some kind of leadership. So I think we should aim for that. Aim to have leaders in society in every walk of life who are established in higher values, and then the rest will take care of itself. But the good and the bad has always been in the world. Even during Krishna's time, the horrible things happened,
Hmm.
you know. So as long as we are optimistic and positive, and each one of us does our bit to promote what is good in society, I'm sure we'll be okay.
Can we talk about how you feel India has dealt with this crisis? When you look at how we dealt with the lockdown and with the pandemic, I'm not talking about the numbers, but as a society, how do you think we've dealt with it?
I think we've done well considering our limitations, considering the huge population, considering the poverty and the slums that we have. We haven't done too badly. If you compare with the United States, for instance, which had all the resources and still they had so many more deaths and so many more
No,
cases.
in terms of psychologically, emotionally, how do you think we?
Oh, um, I don't think we've done badly.
Right. So there
Uh,
must be some innate spiritual immunity that we must be coming with that
yes,
has
we do.
helped us cope with this crisis.
Absolutely. We have this.
Right.
Particularly among the poor, we have it.
Yeah. It's a sense of, but is it a sense of negative fatalism, or is it something more positive?
I think it's positive, where people understand that yes, challenges will come your way,
Mhm.
and all you have to do is face up to it with courage, and it will pass.
What for you is the greatest lesson of the Gita that we need to imbibe currently? The one lesson. If there's just one
Yeah.
thing that we need to learn from it.
You know, when, as I think Mr. Chawla mentioned, there are so many things after the lockdown, that
Yes.
things that were taken for granted were not available to us. And yet, life has moved on.
Hmm.
For instance, no one has been able to visit a salon, no one has been able to eat out. There were so many things denied to us. And yet life moved on. So the lesson is that we really don't need all of these.
Yes.
And if we, like for instance, home cooked food has been so good for us that many people have lost weight, many people have become more healthy.
Healthier.
Yeah.
Healthy.
So the
Healthier.
thought
Healthier.
arises that why do you pay through your nose to eat in a five-star hotel to ruin your health?
Right.
So Gita's lesson one, the reduce your desires. I think that is much more valid now.
And it has helped us to turn inward and look
Yeah.
at other opportunities to be happy.
Right.
And I think that is the greatest lesson.
Right. But happiness itself, how would the Gita define it? How would you define happiness?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. This is my favorite topic. The Gita gives a formula for happiness that is
Oh,
outstanding. And
oh,
it says happiness equals number of desires fulfilled divided by number of desires harbored.
okay.
So, if you follow this, then you will realize that the numerator really doesn't matter. How
Right.
many desires you fulfill is immaterial.
Right.
What matters is the denominator.
Right.
If you systematically bring down the denominator, your happiness increases. And if you bring that down to zero, you hit infinity.
Wonderful.
Don't
I think
harbor
that
desires. Don't harbor desires. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Chawla, any last question?
No, thank you.
I think that's a wonderful note on which to end this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
and
Thank you so much.
for all the lessons, and we hope to have you again soon. Thank you so much.
Will be
Thank you.
a pleasure.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar.